This is my favorite tip, so I'm going to start with it. But let's say you're deep into an edit and you want to sample a different song with a section of footage. So you go over, download a new song, you drop it into your edit, and instead of just manually trying to match the keyframes of the song below it, is press Command-C on the original track, and then Command-Shift-V on the new song, and then make sure you click Maintain on the keyframe timing, and that will automatically transfer over the timing of the original keyframes onto your new song. Then you can use your shortcut to disable the original song and just listen to the new one. You can cycle back and forth. The high line's like his own personal playground. This is a really quick way for just getting the vibe of a new song before you then commit to it and then cut all your footage down to match it perfectly. Sometimes different tracks will be louder, so you can select the whole thing and use a keyboard shortcut to raise or lower the gain. You can also use the range tool to select a specific part of the song and raise and lower it. And this also works really well with interview sound. So if you want to raise and lower a specific section of the interview, instead of creating individual keyframes, just use the range tool. It creates the keyframes for you, and then you can move them however you please. I'm not going to lie, this next tip I'm very excited about. Let's say you've got a song and you want to lengthen a specific section of it, or if you want to have it repeat or loop longer because maybe it gets too epic too quickly. Now, a lot of you have probably done this before. You've chopped up a song in repeated sections, but I want to show you how to do that even better. So here's a song where we want to use just the intro before the drums come in. So we're going to find right where the drums come in, pause, cut it there, find the earlier section that you want to repeat, cut it there as well. If you command, click, and drag, you can move the file over and it will duplicate it automatically. But before doing that, I like to make sure I group the song so that way it keeps all the elements together. So that way you can move the whole song around later, even as you chop it up, and it doesn't break into different sections as it gets more chopped up. Let's play the transition and hear how we did. Okay, not bad, but it's also not perfect. So what most people will do at this stage is just a simple cross dissolve right on the beat. And this is where the new trick comes in. If you do it right on the beat, it sometimes merges the elements together in a way that still feels artificial. So what I like to do is move the transition point prior to where the beat hits. So don't mess up the timing, but if you move the crossfade earlier, it sounds like this. Nice and smooth. You can hardly even tell. It's a buttery way to chop together songs, and it just kicks things up a notch. And then, of course, later, if you start adding keyframes, you might notice they don't transfer over these cut points very well. So remove the keyframes you have added, just balance out the whole song, and then make it a compound. So then that way you can apply your keyframes back to the new compound song and just modify it that way. You can always pop back into the compound to lengthen or change any sections at will. This little color grading tip I love. If you want more space, you can double click the top header and it will lengthen it all the way down the side. This is awesome for if you have more things that you're trying to adjust over in your inspector panel. This is really stinking helpful. And then you can always just double click it again to make it back to normal size. I mean, come on. Those first couple ones are pretty dang helpful. We've got a lot more packed in here. Inevitably, there's going to be a lot of questions about keyboard shortcuts. I'll try to explain some of them as we go. If anything's unclear, I'm going to keep showing my keyboard. I've made so many of them custom that I don't remember what the original ones are. I'm moving very quickly because I want to respect your time, but if you want that keyboard shortcut list and also a Google Doc of me explaining kind of what some of my main theory ones are, I've got that for you. And also with the Final Cut keyboard shortcut stuff that you're going to get, you're also going to get 30 days of tip videos coming out in July, just 30 awesome things in your inbox, me just trying to be helpful for you on a daily basis. That's from my Adventure Film Academy, my school for teaching people how to do awesome video stuff. I'm an adventure filmmaker. I do a lot of videos, so if you haven't posted on my channel, you should probably do that. Hit subscribe, do the like thing, but let's get back into the tips. Let's say you're using a song, but you want to end it at a spot that isn't necessarily ideal. You can fade it down with keyframes, and that would sound like this. That's all right, that's pretty basic, but we can spice this up a little bit, and this is a fun trick with reverb and speed ramping. So what I like to do is mark the spot where I want the song to end, apply some reverb to it, change the reverb to the kind that you want, go to parameters, set some keyframes, and you want to set one keyframe at the end that's for 100% wet mix, and then one right before that that's 0 for dry. Once you do that, you can pop down show audio keyframes to fine tune the exact placement of these. I find I have to finesse it a little bit. Then you can use the range tool, select just that last sliver of the song past the final beat and set it to 2% speed. Now your reverb will continue on past that endpoint of the song and echo out beautifully. You can edit the source frame of the speed ramp by double clicking on it and shifting it around. It takes a little finessing, but then you can get a nice fade out that sounds something like this. Now at this point, you might have already noticed that I've changed my player background to checkerboard. And the reason for that is I often find I'm cropping or moving around clips, scaling them. And I've had it before where a little black sliver makes it into the final edit. And that's just so sad. So with having it white on the background, it's easier to see where your clip isn't covering the full background. Because come on, sometimes it's easy to miss if you accidentally move something a little bit. So go to preferences, set that to checkerboard, makes it way more obvious if your footage isn't filling the full screen when you're moving it around. Only main downside is that if you use a fade to black transition, it's going to look not black when you edit it, but it will look fine normally when you render. Now, this next tip is insanely clutch. Rarely do I learn new things with Final Cut Pro 10. Dylan John had an awesome video about 10 things you're doing wrong, and he taught me this in the video. Blew my mind. I thanked him, asked him if I could rip him off and do my own version of this to just add to the conversation. So thank you, Dylan John, for this video. This tip has to do with sound design. So normally I store all my Foley sound effects in folders on a Dropbox, so that way it can be synced to my different computers and to my editors. And then I would take this and import it into Final Cut for each new project that I was working on, or I would just go through and just preview them from the folder structure. And that process is pretty tedious. It can make you not want to use sound effects, and I'm definitely trying to up my Foley sound design game, and so I want it more utilizable. I want it more right at my fingertips. So this tip is brilliant, and it brings it right into Final Cut for all your projects. All you got to do is make alias of your folder, copy that, go over to your hard drive. So if you come over here to Macintosh HD, go into your library, go to audio, go to Apple Loops. Inside of Apple, if you paste your alias in there, and what it does is it brings it right over to this tab of Final Cut that I've never been to before. If you click on sound effects, you can now go to your folder, select it, and search for any elements that you want. You want to bring in some low whooshes when a drone goes by. You want to do fast whooshes. You want to go even further into your folder structure and organize things even more carefully. You want to bring in some fire sounds. You can do all of that right here in the preview. You can do ins and outs of it. You can bring it in. I'm just quite thrilled about this tip because I've been trying to build out my library, and sometimes I slack and I don't do as much work as I could. On a recent client project that I did for Adamus and Canon, I used a bunch of these rad bike sounds that I was missing in my edit, and it would have been so much easier to be able to just preview those right inside of Final Cut when I was doing my editing, because that would have made the sound design process just so much more efficient. You might be asking, but Levi, where do you get all these sound effects from? And let me tell you, you can get them from the sponsor of this video, Artlist. And let me just say, Artlist has such a special place in my heart because they were the first music subscription service that I ever signed up for. I checked, I went back for this video, and the earliest songs I downloaded from Artlist were in 2016. That's how long I've been a paying customer for Artlist, and I'm genuinely happy to be a paying customer because their service makes me money with the videos that I make. The biggest difference maker for me with Artlist is their unlimited plan. This is just worth its weight in gold, and it's absurdly affordable for how much value you can get out of it. What that means is I can download however much music and sound effects I want for any kind of project that I'm working on. Client work, commercials, my films, YouTube videos, anything and everything that I want to use the music in, I can. I don't have to upgrade or change or modify the licenses ever. It pays for itself in the first project that you want to use it on. And if you actually use my link in the description, you get 2 months free on the annual plan, which is a really great value. And right now, for a limited time, they're giving stuff away to new people who sign up for a limited time. So the clock is ticking, but this is their all-in pack. So if you sign up for Artlist or are a customer already, you get access immediately to hundreds of professional assets, from exclusive sound effects to motion graphics templates to shot lists and so much more. You've got to check out what they're doing. It's a pretty sweet deal. Thank you, Artlist, for sponsoring this video and just having an incredible service that I use and rely on all of the time. Good stuff. This next trick I really like, and I'll use Shift M to create a caption file. And I use caption files as visual Markers. I use them instead of the built-in marker system because they're more visual. You can actually see in your viewer what the marker actually is. It's attached to the clip. You can expand it out over your timeline. And I use dozens of these in my edits. Markers for putting in graphics, sound effects, shots that need fixing. It's like my ongoing to-do list of things I need to revisit in the edit, because often if I don't write it down as I'm thinking about it and doing it, I just will forget it. Of course, you can turn the caption files off in the index or actually put in real caption files later, but this is just so much more visually pleasing to go through as a to-do list than using the built-in to-do list system that's just these tiny little markers. I'm a really big fan of using these caption files like this, and it works great for doing notes in between editors. And as a final step in all of my projects, I make sure to open up the captions in the index, go through it one by one as a to-do list, and make sure my edit is ready to go. Notice how this clip has an audio pop when it transitions. It needs an audio crossfade. I have mine set to Command X. Select all the clips you want. Command X will auto transition. You can drop out, expand the audio, and do J and L cuts quite easily and just modify them and finesse them to your heart's content. I changed mine to a slightly longer duration than by default to 0.3 seconds just because I like them slightly longer. You can set it to whatever you want. You should be using crossfades all the time. Oftentimes, if I'm cropping or reframing a shot where I'm trying to get multiple angles out of the same shot of a person, when I reframe in the next shot, I want to line up the eye line between shots. And the way that I do this is I use a custom overlay that I added, and I just turn it on, and it gives me a bit of a grid that makes it much easier for lining up the wide version of the shot with the tight version. This is especially great for any form of talking head where you're doing a cropped cut in. And it definitely feels more natural when you're watching and the eyes stay in a similar spot. I just made this grid in Photoshop quickly. You can use any PNG file directly uploaded as an overlay. Something that's become second nature for zooming in and out of the timeline is to use the Shift Z key. I used to use the minus and plus keys or the trackpad to zoom in and out. It's just not as precise and not as fast. If you press Shift Z, it auto snaps to the full width of the timeline. If you press Z again, you can drag a window and whatever's in your box will scale to the full size of your timeline window. This is super helpful, so you can get right into a working size, and then immediately you can snap out to full size, grab a clip from a different spot by zooming back in however you want, grab it, and then snap back out, and it will show you where your playhead was originally, and you can jump right back in with a quick Z, drag, you're in. Maybe it sounded a little clunky there, but it's a lot more efficient and less disorienting in big edits instead of swiping around the timeline or pinching in to zoom out. It just feels more accurate to be using the zoom key, and the muscle memory gets built in very quickly. When you get to the color correction, color grading stage, let's say you spent some time on a shot fixing bad white balance and you're fiddling with some adjustments and you spent a little bit of time on it and it looked like this before, now it looks like this. I recommend, if you know that shot's going to come again later, just quickly save that as an effects preset into an active folder just for this library. You can easily reset these every time you're into a new big project, but it's really handy just having a go-to folder that you're constantly saving effects presets to. Things like different drone adjustments, different scenes, different time of day, little quick things that can just save time to reference. This will make it a lot easier in that color grading process. And I've found by doing this, I almost never use adjustment layers for color grading anymore. I just primarily make presets and apply them to the clips themselves, because for me, it's ended up making a cleaner timeline and less mistakes by accidentally cropping or zooming on an adjustment layer or not having the adjustment layer cover the whole clip. This on its own could be a whole 3-hour session, but I really recommend getting comfortable with the index. So right here, I'm searching for all the DJI clips, selecting them all, and then I'm going to be able to strip just the attributes that I want to. So let's say we had a temporary grade on it while we were editing, and now I want to strip that temporary grade. I can uncheck all the options I don't want to strip, just strip the temporary grade, and then I can easily reapply a new grade to all these clips all at once. I feel like this was a lot of the reason why I liked using adjustment layers before, but when you use the index to mass affect a bunch of clips at the same time, it's really powerful. Lastly here, a final tip to send you home with. If you're moving really quick and you don't have time to finesse your project and you actually used your audio rolls properly, what you can do is select your entire timeline, put it all into one compound clip, go over to the audio rolls, click Show Audio Lanes, and then it gives you multiple tracks that you can apply different effects to each one. Maybe all of the talking you want to have voice isolation on, maybe voice enhancer, different effects. Maybe you want to put a limiter on your music. This is just a really quick way to move fast for things like YouTube videos and stuff like that, or maybe you don't have enough time to fully finesse it and you want to batch apply to specific roles on the timeline. I'm going to be honest, there is so much more I could do in this video. I'm having to cut stuff for length, otherwise this is just going to be an hour long and I'm never going to be able to finish going through it. We've got a bunch more where this came from. So if you like Final Cut Pro 10 stuff, technically I could probably have a whole course come out about my walkthrough philosophy of editing video. If there's enough demand for it, I will do that, but I can also do more tip videos like this, just quick stuff. Speed ramping, I've got a whole thing on speed ramping. Final Cut is so good for speed ramping. I got a lot of tricks up my sleeve, and if you've got your best, share them down below. That's gonna be it for this one. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, life's better when you make stuff. Peace.